My name is Daniel and I'm 34 years old. When I was 9 years old, I watched my father pack a single suitcase and leave without saying goodbye. My mother stood in the kitchen, holding a dish towel so tight her knuckles went white, and she never once looked at me. The clock on the wall read 6:47 p.m. I remember that number because I stared at it instead of looking at the front door closing. That night I learned something that stayed with me for 25 years. Silence means someone is already gone before they leave. For 25 years I tried to build a life where nobody could disappear on me without warning. I read people carefully. I noticed small changes, a shift in tone, a missed call, a longer pause before someone answered a simple question. I told myself that if I paid close enough attention, I would never be blindsided again. It didn't always work. Sometimes it just made me tired, always scanning, always bracing. Then I met Priya. Priya was 31, a pediatric nurse at a children's hospital 2 blocks from my apartment. I met her at a coffee shop where she was grading a stack of continuing education quizzes with a green highlighter, her hair pulled back with a pencil stuck through the bun. She looked up and asked if I could watch her bag while she found a bathroom. Small thing. But she came back and said, "Thank you for not running off with my laptop," and I laughed for the first time in months. Priya was steady. She texted back within the hour, every time. She said what she meant, even when it was awkward. On our 6th date, over cheap noodles at a place with flickering fluorescent lights, she told me straight out, "I don't do mind games. If something bothers me, I'll tell you. I need the same from you." That was the opposite of everything I grew up with, and I fell for her because of it. We got married 2 years later, in a small backyard ceremony with 40 guests and string lights her sister hung the night before, the bulb swaying slightly in the evening wind. I remember thinking, standing under those lights, that I had finally built the opposite of that kitchen from when I was 9. For 3 years, our marriage was quiet in the good way. Sunday grocery runs. Bad reality TV. The small, unremarkable rhythm of 2 people who trusted each other. Then, 14 days before our anniversary trip to Portugal, I noticed something. Priya's ex-boyfriend, Marcus, had started liking every single photo she posted. Not commenting. Just liking. Old photos, new photos, a picture of her lunch, a picture of our dog asleep on the couch. Every one, within minutes of her posting it. At first I told myself it meant nothing. People like old photos by accident sometimes, scrolling too fast. I didn't say anything at first. I just watched, the way I'd learned to watch as a kid. Then, at 11:40 p.m. on a Tuesday, I saw a notification light up on Priya's tablet, left open on the kitchen counter while she brushed her teeth. A message from Marcus, "You looked really happy in that photo. I think about us sometimes." I stood there in the dark kitchen, the fridge humming behind me, the tablet's glow the only light in the room, and I felt that old feeling rising in my chest, the dish towel feeling, the feeling of someone about to disappear without telling me why. I didn't confront Priya that night. I didn't confront her the next morning either. Instead, I did something I'm not proud of at first, I went quiet. Really quiet. I answered her in short sentences. I stopped initiating conversation, stopped reaching for her hand on the couch. I told myself I was protecting myself, the way I'd protected myself my whole life, by pulling back before someone could pull away first. For 6 days, Priya kept asking, "Are you okay? You feel far away." And for 6 days, I said, "I'm fine," because saying I'm fine felt safer than saying I saw the message and I don't know what it means. 6 days of silence. 6 days of her watching me watch her. But here's what I hadn't told Priya, and what I hadn't told anyone. On day 3 of my silence, I did something practical instead of emotional. I didn't snoop through her phone. I didn't accuse her of anything. I simply asked her, in a calm voice over dinner, one factual question: "Has Marcus reached out to you recently?" Priya put her fork down and looked at me steadily, the steam still rising off the pasta between us. "Yes," she said. 3 days ago. I didn't respond. "I was going to show you tonight, actually, I took a screenshot in case it ever came up." She turned her phone around. There it was, the same message I'd seen, and below it, nothing. No reply from her. Just the screenshot, timestamped, saved in a folder she'd labeled just in case. I felt something in my chest loosen for the first time in 6 days. Relief, mixed with a little shame for the 6 days I'd spent guessing instead of asking. But the story wasn't over. Because 2 days after that dinner, Priya's mother, Sandra, called her, not me, her, and said something that changed everything. Marcus told me you two have been talking again, Sandra said, her voice bright and casual, like she was discussing the weather. I always liked him for you. Daniel's a nice boy, but Marcus had ambition. You should think about what you're giving up. Priya recorded the call by accident. Her phone was already on speaker in the kitchen, propped against the fruit bowl, and I was standing right there when it happened. I heard Sandra's voice come through clearly, casual and certain, like she was discussing furniture, not her daughter's marriage. Priya stared at the phone after she hung up, her thumb hovering over the red end call button she'd already pressed. She's been talking to Marcus, she said quietly. My own mother has been talking to my ex-boyfriend about my marriage. That was the second wound in 6 days. Not from a stranger. From family. I want to be fair to Sandra, because people are rarely cruel just to be cruel. Sandra had lost her own husband to a sudden divorce 11 years earlier, and ever since, she measured every relationship by stability and money. Marcus was a surgical resident. I was a high school teacher. In Sandra's mind, she wasn't betraying her daughter, she was trying to prevent her daughter from repeating her own mistake. That didn't make it right. But it made it human. Priya decided we needed to have dinner with her parents the following Sunday. Not to fight. To be clear. The dinner was at Sandra's house, the dining room lit by the same amber chandelier that had hung there since Priya was a kid. Priya's father, Robert, sat quietly at the head of the table, the way he always did when Sandra had strong opinions, turning his water glass slowly in small circles. Priya's younger brother, Aiden, 26, sat across from me, glancing between his mother and his sister like he already knew where this was going. Sandra brought up Marcus herself, halfway through the meal, casually, like she was asking someone to pass the salt. I just think you should keep your options open, sweetheart. Marriage isn't always forever. The room went still. Aiden put his fork down, the small clink of metal on porcelain the only sound. Priya didn't raise her voice. She set her hands flat on the table and said, I had the screenshot of the message Marcus sent me. I had the recording of your call telling me to think about giving up my marriage. I'm not sharing them to punish you. I'm sharing them so you understand I know exactly what's been happening. Sandra's face went pale, the color draining from her cheeks under the warm chandelier light. I was only trying to help, she said, but her voice had lost its certainty. You weren't helping me, Priya said. You were trying to control the outcome of my life because you're still afraid of what happened to yours. Nobody said anything for a long moment. Robert stared at his plate. Aiden looked at his mother like he was seeing her for the first time. The chandelier light flickered slightly, an old bulb, nothing dramatic, just the small detail of a room holding its breath. Sandra didn't have a comeback. She just said, quietly, I didn't think you'd find out. That was the whole confession, right there. She didn't think Priya would find out. It was never about Marcus being a better match. It was about control. Priya didn't storm out. She didn't cut her mother off completely, either. Instead, she said one more thing, calm and final, I love you, Mom. But you don't get a vote in my marriage anymore. If you want to stay close to me, that starts today. Sandra nodded, tears in her eyes, and said nothing else that night. Robert walked us to the car, and for the first time all evening, he spoke. She'll come around, he said quietly. Give her time. It wasn't much, but it was something. We left 20 minutes later. In the car, Priya reached over and took my hand, and I noticed, for the first time in 9 days, that my chest didn't feel tight anymore. We still went to Portugal, 3 weeks later than planned. We sat on a balcony overlooking the water on our last night, the sound of waves below and a warm breeze moving the curtain behind us. Priya said, "I'm sorry I didn't tell you about Marcus's message the second it happened. I didn't want to make something out of nothing." "I'm sorry I went quiet instead of asking you directly," I said. "I do that. I learned it a long time ago, and it's not fair to you." We didn't fix everything that night. But we said it out loud, which was more than either of us had done before. 2 months later, Sandra came to our apartment for the first time since the dinner. She brought a small plant, no big speech, and she hugged Priya at the door a little longer than usual. It wasn't perfect. But it was a start. Now, on Sunday mornings, Priya and I sit on our balcony with coffee before either of us checks a single notification. It's a small ritual. It's ours. No phones, no scrolling, just the sound of the city waking up around us. Here's what I've learned. Silence doesn't protect you from being hurt. It just delays the moment you find out the truth, and it often costs you time you can't get back. Real safety in a relationship doesn't come from watching for signs someone might leave, it comes from asking the hard question out loud, even when your voice shakes. I spent 25 years believing that watching was the same as protecting myself. It isn't. Asking is. If you've ever sat in a quiet room, watching for signs instead of asking for the truth, I hope this reminds you that you're allowed to ask. You're allowed to want a direct answer. And you deserve people in your life who give you one. If this story meant something to you, consider subscribing. Every story here is for someone who needed to hear it today.